Kanino ka ba mana? Have you heard of that word? Mana is basically a trait, a behavior that you've acquired, usually from a parent. Now, when it's junior is really doing well, an A student, one of the parent would say, "Nako, manang-mana sa akin. He got that from me." And at the same token, when it's negative, somebody is stubborn, matigas ang ulo, maybe your mom would say, "Nako, manang-mana ka sa tatay mo. You got that after your father," basically. So, in the motherland, and this is from the work of Abad, so we're going to give credit to Abad.
Still talking about mental health, and part of really understanding why someone in our culture, a Filipino, would not access mental health is to understand the causality of disease. Now, I know this practice might be more used by, or this causality of disease, more seen in indigenous groups or in the provincial parts of the Philippines. But you'll be surprised, we all have still remnants of that even here in America. So today we'll talk about and explore the concept of mana.
Are Filipinos truly bilingual? We use the same language at home but speak and love languages foreign to each other, together but separated. Kamusta? I'm Rowan, licensed psychotherapist mom, immigrant twice, first-generation Pinoy raising my mixed Filipino-American children in America. I found that after visiting 500 Filipino homes, I continue to be a student of the culture. In this podcast, we would be seatmates in this beautiful cultural classroom. And by the way, did I tell you I need my kaping barako straight from Batangas before each class? If you're interested in learning the deep intricacies of the Filipino culture, especially as it merged with American culture, talks about trauma-informed care and deepening your Filipino relationships across generations, which includes my fave topic, Pinoy love languages, you're in the right place. Hello everyone, this is Rowan and welcome to the podcast, Speak the Pinoy Love Language. I hope you're having a fabulous day. And if you're listening to this podcast and you're feeling like, oh, I had an awful day, well, I hope you're having a wonderful, an okay moment, because, you know, it's every moment that makes up a day. Talking about now regarding causality of disease and why this is useful information, especially in understanding Filipinos and their mental health. We create stories or explanation. It's a human phenomena when there are events that we cannot explain, when there's no science yet. And so if you are imagining a puzzle frame and you're almost complete with your puzzle except that 3 pieces are missing, what your mind would probably do is just vision the whole picture, what would make of that picture even without those puzzle pieces. That's how our mind works. And also with the concept of causality of disease, it fills in the gap as far as treatment. Like I mentioned, if there's no treatment yet, or perhaps there's no doctor, say if you live in a rural place in the Philippines, your chance to treat someone is to actually diagnose it or to have a little bit more information as far as the causality of the disease. So mana, like I mentioned, is the passed on trait or behavior. So let me give you scenarios I grew up with, listening even to news. These things are not very uncommon. Once in a while, you hear stories, even in the news, of someone who had been handcuffed, usually a child or an adult child, maybe in the back of their house, say in the province, because they have been acting strange. And so what is commonly the reason why this scene has been discovered is because of DSWD, which is sort of like the child welfare services in the Philippines. So someone might have reported that this has been the case for many years, and the look is someone going through a mental health condition. I think usually, not all the time, but possibly a diagnosis of schizophrenia. But obviously, we don't know in the province what is that and what is going on with this kid, right? And in the causality of mana, it really brings shame to the family that they might have acquired whatever behavior they're doing, talking to themselves, being angry with someone they cannot see, basically having some auditory and visual hallucination, that the parent who might not have the information would think, oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing. I would have to lock my son somewhere so he will not be seen because other people might think he got this straight from us. So this is the causality of mana when it's the negative, right? You're going to really hide it, make sure that other people would not notice it, because not only is it damning for the parents, but also the siblings might be ostracized in school. And in a collective society, there is a feeling that eyes are watching. Not only are we closer to each other, like when we say close knit, like literally the house also may be closer together, not all the time depending on the province, but our homes are more open. So now we have like open design of homes here in America, but that's kind of like usually the style of like the kubo, right? There's openness there, and so people can see. Even in the province, some people might have television, and this is like many years ago, maybe 10 years ago. I would assume that most people now have cell phone, but people would actually look through your window and share this gif of the television. So I want to also note that mana really does not have an English translation. I think it also has a link to the word hawa. That means infecting someone. And so mana, like I said, is like passing on a behavior or a trait to your child. And so hawa is infecting someone. And what's interesting is during the COVID, which we still have now while I'm recording, we're so huddled together, right? So the PPE, the protective personal equipment, is so much more rigid and strict back home. Like they have to wear a mask and a face shield. And being collective, it's the opposite. Here in America, some people actually would argue they don't want to wear a mask. I want to believe that most people are very considerate of others. But in the Philippines, I would even have stories of people having spent an hour driving and then they forgot their mask. They actually would not go in the grocery store after having spent, heavy traffic for 1 hour. So you could see that in close proximity versus in the American physical proximity, which is there's more of this bubble in between, that we feel that hawa, like infecting someone, there's a little bit more of a leeway there. But in the Philippines, aside from the fact we're more populated, a smaller country, it's also the concept that, we're so close together, madaling mahawa. Like we can infect someone more easily. Up next, I'll talk more about mana. And I hope you stick around. And just a quick commercial break. Diyan ka lang. This episode is brought to you by Story Therapy. This is therapy and coaching blended together that hugs neuroscience, creativity, and honoring the wisdom of your body to heal. It's a 3-month framework that includes 10 one-on-one sessions with me. To check out if we're a good fit, see the link in the show notes for a complimentary consult. Finally, let's continue our conversation about mana and again how it relates to Filipino mental health. So I already talked about how it's so shaming, right? We're so connected together. And if a piece of us has something wrong with it, it tells us that everything else has as a defect, basically. So it's coming from that mindset and why people really hide mental health disorder, even hide their children for many years, right? They'd say, nako, nasiraan na ng ulo, or my child has turned or has gone mad. And so it's important to understand this concept. It might have come from even religious or indigenous beliefs na kung ano ang puno, siyang bunga. If I may say that in English, whatever is the tree, the puno, is whatever its outcome, its seed. So, meaning to say, if you are, the parent is the puno, the bunga is a reflection of that puno. So, that's why parents are a little bit more, that might be also one of the reasons that mindset, that parents are like, oh, you better act right because the way you are reflects me. And the way I'm reflected reflects the generation that came before me or before us. So, why it is important to understand, I've mentioned this, if you're a community helper, instead of coming from a place of, I wonder, bakit kaya? Why is it that Filipinos don't access care? Now, if that's a tone of curiosity, that's wonderful. But sometimes we get so ines. Now, a little ines is good, right? Because ines could come from also passion and trying to change the trajectory of mental health. That's not always a bad thing. But if you come with judgment, I don't know why, that type of tone, then it's likely you won't encourage other Filipinos to access care. It's important to come from a place of like, oh, I understand why they don't. So that then you can provide information where you're speaking the other person's language. What good is it, right? If your information is so good, so yummy, but the other person could not understand it. And so with that, I'm ending this episode. I hope it's been helpful. If you can do me a favor, please leave a stellar 5-star review for this podcast. Why that's important, it allows us to be visible to other Filipinos that are looking for information that's really hard to find. So I thank you so much. Again, this is Rowan sa ulitin.